The Bushmen. In the small, isolated town of Red Hollow, Maine, there's an old legend that everyone knows, but no one wants to talk about. They call them the Bushmen. No one knows where they came from, or if they've always been here, but the rule is simple. Don't cross them. They're the reason our local police hardly ever have to handle serious crimes. Wrongdoers just vanish. Folks say the Bushmen see everything. Every step you take, every word you speak, every drop of blood you spill. By the time anyone hears about it, they already know. And if you've drawn their wrath, you don't get a second chance. I never believed a word of it, not until the night I gave them a reason to come for me. It started with Lauren. We'd been together for 3 years, but things had been falling apart for months. She was convinced I was cheating. I wasn't, but once she got the idea in her head, there was no shaking it.
That night, she'd found something. A receipt, a text, who knows, and came at me like a storm. She followed me from room to room, shouting, accusing, demanding names. I told her she was crazy over and over, but that excuse had worn thin. My pulse pounded in my ears, her voice was drilling into my skull, and something in me snapped. We were in the kitchen when I grabbed the first thing within reach, a large butcher knife. I didn't think, I just drove it into her throat, her expression twisted from fury to shock, then to a look I'll never forget. Pure disbelief. She fell to her knees, clawing at the floor, choking on her own blood. Her gurgling only enraged me more. My eyes fell on the cast iron skillet heating on the stove. I snatched it up and swung hard. The sound it made, wet, heavy, will never leave me. I hit her again and again, until there was barely anything left of her face. Blood pooled across the kitchen tile, dripping into the cracks. I dropped the skillet with the metallic clang and waited for guilt to come. It didn't. All I felt was relief. I hoisted her body onto my shoulder. Her head hung limply beside mine, dead eyes fixed on me as if she still had something to say. I chuckled as I stepped out into the night, the cool air heavy with pine. I dropped her onto the cold earth and went to fetch a shovel from the shed. That's when I felt it. It started as a sensation, like being watched. I looked toward the tree line. At first, all I saw were the dense thickets and twisted shapes of the forest. But in the corners of my eyes, I thought I saw movement, shadows slipping back into the green. As I dug, I heard faint whispering. It came from the woods, low and deliberate, like dozens of voices murmuring just beyond understanding. Every time I looked, the forest stood still, but I knew. By the time the shallow grave was filled, the sun was gone. Sweat plastered my shirt to my back, and the blood stains had darkened, turning a sickly orange in the fading light. That's when I saw them. Figures, thin, unnaturally tall, with skin the color and texture of bark. Their faces were gaunt and gnarled, framed by tangles of leaves and twigs, hollow eyes fixed on me from behind the cover of the bushes. They blended so perfectly into the foliage that I could only see parts of them, half a face, a long branch-like arm, but they were there, watching, whispering. "What are you staring at?" I shouted. "You saw her. She was hysterical. I had to do it." They didn't move, didn't speak, just watched. I dropped the shovel, spat on the ground, and went inside. I knew they'd come for me under the cover of darkness, but I wasn't going without a fight. I shoved furniture in front of the doors, nailed boards over the windows, and loaded my shotgun. One door I left open, the back door facing the woods. I set a chair in front of it and sat, the gun resting in my lap. Out there, beyond the threshold, they were still watching. We stared at each other for 3 days. I didn't eat, barely drank, just sat and kept my eyes on the tree line. Eventually, exhaustion began to win. My head would dip, my eyes closing for seconds at a time until I snapped myself awake. On the third night, I told myself that if I closed my eyes for just a moment, I could still open them in time to shoot. I leaned back in the chair, smiling at my cleverness. I don't know if I slept for a second or a day, but when I opened my eyes, they were gone. Panic jolted me to my feet. I raised the shotgun, scanning the yard. Nothing moved. The tree stood still. Slowly, I stepped outside, the cold night air wrapping around me. That's when I saw them, peering from around the sides of my house. Their branch-like hands curled around the edges of the siding, their hollow eyes locked on me. My throat tightened. I fired. The blast tore into the door frame, missing entirely. I reloaded and fired again. Splinters flew, but the Bushmen didn't move. They just kept staring. I fumbled for another shell. A shadow fell over me. I looked up. They were on me. I screamed and snapped the shotgun closed. My thumb caught between the barrels. Pain flared white-hot as it severed clean off. The world spun and went black. I woke to cold. My vision swam, and I realized I was being dragged. The world around me was darkness, the ground hard and dry beneath my back. My ankles burned, broken, twisted, and my hand throbbed where my thumb had been. They pulled me deep into the forest, where the air grew damp and metallic. The soil here was dark red, wet to the touch, but the path we traveled was bone dry. Ahead, shapes hung from the branches of massive, unnatural bushes. When we drew closer, I saw them clearly. Human bodies, skin stripped away, still moving, still alive. Their moans filled the air, and I realized with horror that the Bushmen were feeding the plants. Blood dripped steadily from the hanging bodies, soaking into the roots. I thrashed, screaming for help, but my voice was swallowed by the darkness. Dozens of the Bushmen stepped silently from the thickets, their eyes reflecting what little light there was. I knew then what was coming. Soon I'd be hanging among them, my flesh feeding the hungry bushes, my voice joining the chorus of the damned. And there was nothing I could do to stop it.